I'm going to do just another round of chat spam and then we'll get started. Hello everyone. This presentation will be mostly in voice, but Helena is going to do transcribing and we will be pasting some things in chat. I'd like to introduce my good friend and colleague Rhiannon Chatnoir, also known as Joyce Bettencourt in real life. Joyce will be talking with us about the upcoming OpenSimulator Community Conference, also known as OSCC, held this year on Saturday, December 5th, 2015. Coming up really soon. OSCC is an annual conference that focuses on the developer and user community creating the OpenSimulator software. Organized as a joint production by core developers of OpenSimulator and Avacon, the virtual conference featured presentations, workshops, keynote sessions, and social events across diverse sectors of the OpenSimulator user base. Can you all hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yep, sounding good.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thanks. More information can be found at this website here. Joyce is the online community manager for the nonprofit Commons community in Second Life run by TechSoup Global. They meet every Friday at 8:30 a.m. Second Life time for an amazing variety of programs. Hi Viejo, come on in. In addition, she is the creative director of the Vesuvius Group, a collaborative studio specializing in developing online immersive and social environments for community building. She is also co-founder and vice president of Avacon Incorporated and served as president from 2010 to 2014. It is through her generous effort that ISTE has a parcel on the Avacon OpenSim grid. Joyce is a 2012 graduate of the Singularity University Graduate Studies program, focused on applying exponential technologies to addressing global grand challenges. I agree, Daisy. Previously, she was digital media producer for the online leadership program at the educational nonprofit Global Kids and helped produce the digital media learning content, events, and the social issue game Consent. Joyce, what can you tell us about the OpenSim Community Conference?
Hi, Beth, and everybody else here. It's great to be here. As you said, that from the description that, you know, OSCC is an annual conference, so this is our third year. And the prior 2 years we had a multi-track 2-day conference. And this year we actually, with a little bit more condensed time and also trying to make it as dynamic as possible, we narrowed it down to for at least the content-wise, of the presentations, to a single day and a single track, or single stream, sort of like you would get in like a TED type of event, or Ignite, or Pechakusha, or there's a lot of words for those kind of like quick dynamic presentation type events, in hopes to spotlight what is awesome about the platform. So we had proposal submissions, obviously, early on, and we had kind of sorted up the schedule. So I'll be sharing with you guys too some of the stuff that is happening at the conference itself. Another thing, as Beth was mentioning, it is very much a community conference. So the Avicon, which is the nonprofit that the 501c3 nonprofit that I co-run, is a producer of it, and obviously kind of holds the liability and the responsibility for some of the for the event itself, but is very much a community-run event in that it's made up of many folks from both that you would know from the Second Life community, and in OpenSimulator as well. So many volunteers, our track leaders, core developers of OpenSim itself, and I'm going to grab a link. So I'm going to grab some text so I can kind of share that in regards to who's part of the organizing team too, so you can kind of see that. So that's kind of who's helping out in regards to that, and we have lots of events, lots of volunteers as well. So as I said, the presentations we're planning on most of them. We'll still have our keynotes where the OpenSim core developers, as well as those working on the viewer, and sort of some other kind of another technology focused panel dealing with educational and best kind of case uses of using NPCs, which are non-player characters. That's a kind of another featured panel that's at the end, that Stephen Gazer, as some of you know him from the Vibe virtual biology OpenSimulator group, both in Second Life and in OpenSimulator. Yes. So he'll be kind of moderating that. So those will be our featured panels. In fact, the fact that there'll be hour-long presentation, hour-long panels with multiple people presenting on those topics. Otherwise, the others will be shorter 20-minute presentations with sort of 5 minutes for Q&A. So very dynamic, little less in the way of pouring out everything, but with supplementary expo and sort of walkthrough workshop. A lot of the presenters are also, I don't know, some of you may know someone like Kay McClellan. She's actually, outside of her presentation, also gathering together a whole bunch of educational and other resource content for folks that she'll be allowing people to tour. So we're trying to make them as sort of dynamic and then deeper past the presentation itself. I'm not sure if anybody has a translator, but something about the conversation. As I said, the presentations will focus on sort of the big picture vision, spotlighting the awesome work and projects in OpenSimulator and looking to the future of what the platform kind of holds. So both, whether that be on the technical level in regards to OpenSimulator core development and the viewer development related stuff, but then also what folks are thinking about in its uses as well. And along with that, so that is on December 5th, and I'll there's the main date. But then we also were encouraging others to present, hold other community and social events. In doing that, as we sort of started to search out, looking for others to have a companion kind of events, we've got a few in, as I said, Kay McClellan, and I'll go through the schedule more in detail after this. Kay is hosting that kind of giveaway tours of the content she's been compiling. We've got quite a few other people that are doing other events, whether they be community or educational or social related. And then as we were organizing that, we also decided an important part in getting folks comfortable with OpenSimulator. And I'm not sure, and I should ask that question, like how many here actually have familiarity and have used OpenSimulator, regardless of the grid, whether that be Kitely or OS Grid, or I know Beth mentioned Abacon, but it would be good to get that kind of I love the exclamation points, yay. But OpenSimulator, and I'll kind of pass the main link for that. If you're not familiar with it, here's the wiki for OpenSimulator. And it obviously is a multi-platform, multi-user, 3D virtual world server. Sort of, basically, it's the open source variant of what Second Life is here, but it has its own development path. Though a lot of things are shared, and especially there are shared viewers. Like a lot of you use things like Firestorm or Singularity, which you can use in either place. But in essence, it's an open source variant of what we're doing here in Second Life. The magic being in that anybody can host a grid. So there are many people who run grids that rent out space in the same way that Linda Lab does that here. And then there are also others who decide to set up a grid either for their university or their business, or even a private grid, which might be self-hosted in a server box in their own house. The code is open, and anybody kind of can set that up. So it's very dynamic in that way. But one of the special things, it's similar to here, though. Obviously, you can create content and all that other stuff. You have more flexibility related to content, of course, because you can import and export things from the back-end control console panel, which you can't do here in Second Life. So if you're working on complex content things, can you add that active OpenSim grid list? I'm not sure what you mean by that, Nova, if that was for me. But you can import and export content a lot easier. You can kind of save whole regions in the same way that you could create experience just as you would here. You can create a region and sort of save it, take it down, load it back up, so it makes it a great space if you're doing project work in that way. Okay, thanks. And so one of the things we had thought very important, so anybody can host a grid, as we said, but then there's the concept of hypergrid, which though there are more and more hypergrid tour groups that have been popping up, and some of you who are part of OpenSimulator or who are users in some OpenSimulator grid or another might be familiar and have gone on an OpenSimulator tour of some sort. But a lot of folks who haven't are and who've not hypergridded, which hypergridding is basically similar to what we do here with teleporting, where we can jump from point to point. It allows you to have that interconnection from jumping from one server and one wherever your avatar is in OpenSimulator, and to a whole other hosted server somewhere else. Same way that the web works, right? So protocols that would allow you to kind of jump from site to site, server to server. It's an option that people can choose to open up or not. But it's a very important part of OpenSimulator if you do want an interconnected kind of metaverse feel world, where you wouldn't be just held to your own regions. So what we thought, besides our regular content, on the Sunday, we reached out to quite a few of the Hypergrid Tour folks, and with the leadership of Thurza Ember, if any of you are familiar with her Hypergrid Safari. She runs that, and I can probably grab you a link somewhere for that.
I'll get that, Rhiannon.
Oh, thanks. The Hypergrid Safari folks are on Sunday, and well, not just the Sunday, but they're organizing a large group of resources and also a kind of a Hypergrid 101 and tour, and even at each step in the way of this Hypergrid tour that will be part of a special for OSCC. There'll be folks there. We'll have folks from various countries, so there'll be multiple language support, in hopes that this will be a way for folks to kind of get familiar with Hypergrid. And yes, Pathfinder was one of the first people who started to do those Hypergrid tours. For anybody who's been following the scene for quite a while, at one point even Linden Lab had a team when there was when they were looking at interoperability and this sort of concept between hypergridding, and that changed many years ago. I think back in 2008 or 9, maybe, if I'm somewhere around there. So Linden Lab changed its direction in regards to not as directly collaborating with what was going on with the hypergrid, and those sort of things. So we are here in this space, and anybody who sets up an OpenSimulator grid, if they choose to, can be connected to those spaces. But yes, Pathfinder's on many of those tours, and there's quite a few folks. Serene Jewel, which maybe, Beth, if you want to find that link too, that's another popular tour group. She's also here in Second Life as well. But either way, so that's another highlight to what we're doing during that. So we're planning for the hypergrid that there'll be kind of a how-to area where people will be able to kind of follow us step by step, not only in the directions that are there, but then also have help on hand if they have any questions. Thurza and a bunch of others are also collecting landmarks. Basically themed sets of landmarks for folks, so like an educational related one, an artistic one, shopping focused, other like interesting sort of landscape or social music related ones. So we'll have those as well there. They'll also, as I said, the Sunday hypergrid trip, which that is from, and I'll kind of put that there, is Sunday at 11 a.m. and it goes till 2, so that's a 3-hour tour, which is kind of funny. There'll be several stops.
What was Sunday at 11?
That's the hypergrid. That's the hypergrid tour specifically. So the special tour that they're doing for OSCC.
Oh, okay.
Yep. We're just calling it OSCC Hypergrid Tour. So it's not really specifically branded for one of the particular tours themselves. It's sort of a special one that's put together for that. But Thurza and some others will be leading it up. So they'll be going to some major grids and where folks can kind of get other content and get their bearings on how to jump around. I think for those that are more advanced, they're also planning on doing sort of self-guided treasure trail type hunt for other landmarks that people can visit along the way too, for that one. So hopefully it appeals to folks who've never tried hypergrid, or who have and either want to find other folks to jump along with, or find new places you maybe haven't gone. So that's on the Sunday. So Saturday's content is sort of all the presentations, and then Sunday we'll be having that. And I can kind of get, and I don't know if Beth, interrupt me if you want at any point to ask me questions. But I can run down. Oh yes, ISTE has on the Avicon grid. So and let me actually give you the link too while I'm here. I do that for registering, so that way you can actually register. So here's the link to the conference registration, though, and other info is obviously, if you go to the other tabs on that site, you can find out more info. And I'll be putting the link to the conference schedule in there, but I'll share it with you guys now, so you'll get to see it before it's even up on the site tonight. I know, secrets, huh? Well, it's not secret, it's just not announced. So yes, that's the registration, and we are, all of this is, like I said, volunteer run and also supported by the community as well. So you'll see in that registration that we actually hold a crowdfunder and kind of give out perks, everything from kind of early access and to like community booths if you wanted a virtual kind of expo booth for your self org group, whatever, and then also to physical stuff like real life t-shirts that we'll be sending out to folks once the conference is over, so you can get the real life conference shirt, even though it's a virtual conference. So that's the registration, and I can jump to and you'll also find on the site too, and I'll get that as well. So there's still room if you beyond that, if you want to volunteer, there's still time to volunteer, and also if you actually want to host a companion event. And that's an interesting noise. I don't know what that is. It's a growl.
It's Tango's mic. It's open accidentally.
Ah.
Tango, like, if you can hear me, could you turn your mic off, please?
It's like a little low growl.
Thanks.
And that's also the link for if you want to host a companion event, which we've even had folks, which I don't know if Lysena is here, but Lysena Wisdom Seeker, she often hosts an event even in Second Life. So even if you've got an event that you want to kind of invite people over to this side of things too, we kind of are fine with the whole cross-pollinating between an OpenSim and a Second Life event. Just let us know, whether that's leading up to or even sort of following kind of afterwards. Let me share with you kind of the rough link. I'll get you the link for the schedule so you guys can kind of follow along as I So here's the link. So this is the overall schedule, though we're still refining a few things. So not all the copy is complete or edited in that kind of way, and certainly we're still getting additional bios and things in. So not all the speakers are listed within their corresponding presentations. But this at least is kind of the early cut where you can see what we've got so far. And we're also listing those social events too. So if you did end up wanting to host a social or community event, they will end up on this calendar as well. You can, when you register, you can kind of actually even, the schedule kind of app allows you to sort of pick and choose what you want to present to and even save and share it and that kind of thing. So it's pretty robust in regards to that. And this will be linked to the main conference site. So you don't have to worry about losing the link. A few of the things, sort of highlights from this. So obviously the keynote, which the first keynote, and we start, so they were starting at 7 a.m. Second Lifetime, and then going till 6, and it's a long day, but it's only a single track, and we'll have breaks in between. So I think, so we think it should be go pretty quick in that regard. And there's less of, unlike in prior years where we had 4 or 5 tracks, where it's a single thread, everybody will be able to be together. So we're hoping that actually results in more cross-pollination of folks. So, not just educators sitting in the educational track or business folks or developers sitting in their tracks, but the ability for outside of the keynotes, which is the only place that there was that kind of pollination before, for that to happen throughout. So the keynote, we start things off, and that would be with the core developers, and they'll be discussing kind of the future. And actually, before I jump into this, do you have any questions, Beth? I'm just sort of going. And yeah, yep, there will be stuff happening there. And it's unfortunate that it connects or coincides with VISTE. Is VISTE Saturday and Sunday? Or are you just driving on a Saturday?
We're just driving on a Saturday. VISTE is Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday.
Okay. But yes, there are some events leading up to that, and I know there will be some after that as well. But certainly Kay's stuff, she's got that all going prior to, and then I encourage others, like I said, to plan things in that time range of days. So the keynote, as I said, that's with the core developers, and hopefully we'll be able to kind of get have a conversation about the future of the platform. And the folks that'll of course include folks like Oren from Kitely and Krista, who is sort of is responsible for the hypergrid code, and other folks that Melanie and Nebadon and several others that were there last year, and we're hoping to get others that are broader than that even. We're hoping for that. I mean, he was there last year, so it's just kind of confirming those details that he would be part of that, the core developers, because certainly he is one of the core developers. The Kitely folks, whether it be Oren or Alien. And then I'll kind of quickly go down the other one. So then the other one, the next panel after that, we start the those quicker presentations, and we have a panel that kind of deals a little bit more. If anybody was at last year's, where Pathfinder did his presentation on sort of porting content between Second Life and OpenSimulator, where he was able to kind of export out and import out and sort of went through that process with folks. So you can kind of get the flow of content being moved from Second Life to OpenSimulator or back. This isn't by Pathfinder, but in some ways it's a jumping off point from that, where this will be Paul Emery talking about how you can take your OpenSimulator content, or of course Second Life as well, but how you can take the content that we've made in these spaces and then port them out to things like Unity 3D, and then be able to then create to have an experience that would be viewable in, say, something like a Google Cardboard or an Oculus Rift or those kind of things. So very relevant with a lot of folks that are trying to explore VR devices. So that will be right after the keynote. And then after that we have Air University, which is the Air Force. And if folks know, well, Barbara, and who's I think here, right? She was a second ago. Yes, I'm calling you by your real name. I'm sorry. Delightful. And also Lear Lobo, Cynthia Calanya, sorry, for those who know her as well, are behind this, along with several others that they're gonna have from Air University, and speaking on not only the tech that they're using, because with their physics engine and bullet sim, but then also some of the projects that delve into the Internet of Things, and other kind of connections like that, using OpenSimulator and connecting them with other technologies. So that's that one, and I'm actually just kind of pasting in the descriptions as we go, but they're all in the if you click on any of the links in the schedule, you can get further details too. So and then we have a break, and then another presentation. Several SUNY SUNY graduate students, along with the professor that's been working with them, are going to talk about designing worlds for professional uses. So in essence, training and other kind of use cases that these grad students sort of worked on. So if you're doing any sort of projects where you're wondering, like, how can how can you, whether you're educating others to use OpenSimulator and create their own simulations for either a class-related thing or sort of professional-related thing. This should be interesting. SUNY, yes, SUNY University. So I think that is New York. Yes, State University of New York. Sorry. And then after that, we have a couple of middle school related projects. Well, this one and then one later on in the day. One is Techland. That is after that. Yep, we have I think at least 2 or 3. So Techland, a virtual world for math and science, which that'll be sort of shown off, and what the students have been doing there, the educational content and 3D scripting, and they sort of focused on the biology and earth science and chemistry and what they were doing with that. Yes, this is that SUNY in particular, Andrew. And then the presentation kind of after that at 10:30. Again, all these times are Second Life for Pacific. Steve Levine, for folks who might know him. It will be diving, again, we're kind of jumping back to a technical, more in nature topic, and he'll be dealing with impacts of kind of blending artificial intelligence and human intelligence and in those spaces in regards to VR. So a lot of talk on AI and how that relates to virtual environments. Then again, another meal break, or break in general, so I should say. And then coming back after that is the developer panel, where we're hoping to try to get together as many as we can, folks that have been working on various viewers, I should say, not the developer, but the developer, that have been working on various viewers and sharing their having a discussion on not just their viewers, but also I think also kind of focused on the user experience in general for accessing OpenSimulator, and even thinking about that for the future of that and virtual worlds in general. And that's being moderated by Mal Burns. For any of you who are familiar with In-World Review, and I can even give you kind of a link to the last In-World Review. If you haven't, you can. That's sort of one of his prior episodes, which was just this past week. So that will be one of the other featured keynotes. Then we kind of jump back into the quicker presentations again. The State of the Metaverse, which is Maria Koroloff for Hypergrid Business, for those of you who know her through that. And she'll be kind of going over the whole landscape in regards to OpenSimulator, and then also kind of correlating that with VR and things like Oculus and those stats as well. So, and then we have more another educational panel. I'll paste that here, where we're talking exploring OpenSim with middle school students. So another middle school related one, Predator and Prey. So again, kind of dealing with science content, and this is out of Arizona State University in their Hive program. So they have kind of an Ask the Biologist, and they're also collaborating and being sponsored by the University of British Columbia. So it's kind of a joint effort of what they're doing in OpenSimulator. So that's that. And then after that, I don't know if any of you are familiar with Rez Mella and Ramesh, who's kind of been working on that. In essence, he's using kind of pre-programmed and a modular system to help people be able to create quick immersive builds and virtual training and exercises and those sort of things. So, and that kind of spans not just spans the topic of either doing training exercises and whether being professional and also educational. So he's after that. And
Rhiannon, I have a question.
Sure.
Well, I have 2. One, could you slow down a little bit, because
I'm
having a lot of trouble keeping up with my
Sorry.
brain. That's okay. You have a lot to say, and it's all cool.
I know.
And the other question is, will you be recording the sessions for later viewing as you have
Yes,
with
yes.
past
I
conferences?
forgot to mention that as well. But yes, we will be. Format-wise, it's similar to all the prior years in regards to the flow of that. So though we're only one track and in one series of presentations,
That's awesome.
they'll be
Not so many
streamed.
difficult choices.
Yeah. So there won't be that choice factor in that regard, that there's nothing you'll lose out on if you're attending. But then we still will be recording. We'll be streaming live and recording. So even if you know that you can't jump in world, or there's somebody that isn't as familiar with a virtual world like Second Life or OpenSimulator, and aren't as familiar with jumping into OpenSimulator yet, you can also just even share the live streaming details as well, so they can watch it live, and then there will be an archive as well. So
Coyote has a question in
yeah.
chat too.
So go to the conference and participate and see also. Oh yeah, okay. I mean, certainly, I don't know if that will. I don't know if. So the discussion about the development things happening in Philip's project. So last year we had Philip keynote, and we kind of had that sort of mixed reality related thing where we had people in both spaces and was streaming him in. We're not having him keynote, and a lot of the presenters, the kind of the awesomeness of OpenSimulator has been more the focus. So the discussion will probably come up, especially I think when we start to talk about things like user experience with the viewers, and then some of the project work that people have done. But there won't be anybody, but Philip will not be there specifically. So in that regard, we won't have any updates directly from High Fidelity, or from Sansar, of course, at that point, unless unless any of the viewer folks give us any updates that they might know in that world. So yes, yeah. No, it's sort of a little bit special this year in the fact that it is very like the awesome of OpenSim, right? So we're trying to really put it, and those are, by the way, Stephen Gazer's words. So the awesome of OpenSim. So that's kind of like our little informal tagline. But so it's a little bit more hyper focused in that regards. Not that, again, we're talking about professional work and the best user case studies and things like that. Of course, things cross over between Second Life and OpenSimulator in that regard, except for when you're talking about bringing content in and out and some of those things. And I'm happy, to chat deep about that at some point. But what platform is best for what projects. But in regards to the conference, this particular event, we're focusing more so on OpenSim. And then so the educator showcase, you're talking in regards to K's related thing, I think, right?
You had that on the schedule for Wednesday,
yeah.
Thursday,
So
and Friday
that is the
before.
companion. That is the companion community event to the next presentation that I was going to chat about. Was Kay McClellan, which I don't know if anybody might know her from. I think she's had involvement with Vibe, of course, and she's also was a presenter at the Federal Consortium of Virtual World seminar symposium, if you were virtually at that as well. But Kay is bringing in a group of folks, a group of educators specifically from various projects and universities and schools, and having them kind of talk about this idea of using, of educational content, and sort of that, that proverbial in search of content for that educators go on, and especially in OpenSimulator, since the interconnections is aren't as, it isn't as easy as it is here, maybe, to kind of come across all the content creators or all the content as it is. Though there are, there have been improvements to that with things like Kitely and their marketplace. And of course, the more people who learn to hypergrid, the better that content sharing gets too. So that's the other part of that puzzle. But Kay has been doing a lot of work on that for herself, and so she's got a presentation where she's bringing together several educators who's going to talk on that, and then the event that you saw that's sort of leading up to and is over several days. It goes from the 3rd to the 7th. That's kind of the companion community piece that Kay has. So she has curated all this content from various places and between some of the people that are on the panel with her, that presentation with her as well, and put it together in an open simulator hypergrid accessible grid. And so when you see that on the schedule, that's what that is. So the ability that before that presentation, and then obviously after that presentation, that there's this whole showcase of educational focused content and that is being given away that you can kind of go and pick up and bring back to whatever grid you are part of. So that's what that is. So when you see that on the schedule, that kind of is a companion to the presentation. Then for kind of the last block of content in the conference, we're doing a bit more of the dynamic related stuff. So we have at 3:30 Second Life time, and I'll paste that time. I feel funny saying SLT when I'm talking about OpenSim, though it's the same thing. I should say just Pacific, but so we're having the Avatar Repertory Theater, who will be doing a live short performance from from a play, and then kind of talking about their workflow and how they kind of do those things. And then there'll also be kind of a companion tour outside of that as well. So they'll be doing a live kind of excerpt from their performance. Then and then after that, we have the creating architecture and magic in OpenSim, which Andrew, right? You're here, aren't you? Filming somewhere, I think. That will be right after that, and so I'm not sure if he'll be rezzing anything out, but hopefully we see some things actually live. Then the last two parts of the formal presentation stuff, we're focusing around NPCs. We got quite a few presentations that came in about using NPCs, which are non-player characters. So avatars that are basically bots that are being controlled by scripts of in Second Life here, to use a bot, you kind of have to have an account that's logged in and then have scripts driving it in a different way, and it has to be controlled by being either scripts that are in world or talking out to an outside web database that's giving it prompts, right? And it has to be an account that's logged in, just like we would log in our own account, right? Though you can use a light viewer. So, but in OpenSimulator, you can actually do that right in the back end of the console. When you're setting up a region, you can say, I want these bots and I want them there, and all that sort of stuff, and then load an avatar and its contents, and not actually have to yes, that's Mary and Spiff. Yes, the architecture one. But not have to load extra viewers. The server architecture itself would be hosting the bots along with the regions. So the first of those two kind of companion ones is the power of NPCs, and that will feature Ferd Fredericks, which some people might be familiar with his OpenSim free content that he's been giving, and some of the cool things he's done with bots, and with things like rideable animals that are bots and other kind of neat things like that, and actually safari animals that are on their own, and sort of using bots in those interesting ways. And then also Nara Malone, who's been using them for kind of storytelling, creative storytelling related things. So the two of them are going to be in that Power of NPCs presentation, where they're going to kind of talk more on that background and why NPCs can be so powerful, and kind of a rough of how how they're setting those up. So so that's that. And then after that will be kind of a closing, sort of akin to the keynote panels in a way, but another hour-long panel where that'll be the best practices of various educators. These are all educators that happen to be on this one that are at this point that are using NPCs in immersive learning or student sort of based experiences. Some of you may know Rachel from her public health, Rachel Umaran, in her public health simulation. She'll be there, as well as Stephen will be talking about Stephen and Kimberly Rufer-Bach, which some of you might know her from The Magicians. She's done lots of great immersive work over the years in Second Life and both OpenSimulator. And we have quite a few others, and we have at least another person that's part of that panel too. And I think actually Stephen is still looking for folks that might be using NPCs. So if you're using NPCs in your educational related stuff in OpenSimulator, ping Stephen Gazier on that. He's actually moderating that panel. And so then we pretty much kind of close up the formal stuff for the Saturday. And if you see in the schedule, there's a few other events that happen after that are things that are submitted by others in the community. And Cudworth taking folks through a walking tour of the game-based content that she created for her book that's out. So that'll be happening as well. There'll be a couple of course, Kay's educational showcase stuff will be happening throughout this entire time, so you can always hop through there. We have numerous expo-related things that'll be going on the grid, so that's something that you can hop through. And because folks can set up community booths, and they're also giving away content there, and you can kind of learn about various grids and others that are doing creating content and doing cool things in OpenSimulator. And then there's a couple social things. One at the end of Saturday, a Littlefield Grid, and another one at the end of Sunday after the Hypergrid tour in OS Grid. And I know we have a few other things. I think Stephen is going to be planning a tour through the work that him and Kim have done in their related project. And I know we've got a couple other people that said they were going to put in for community related things. So that is the overarching content, which I know is a lot in one presentation to put out. But and again, I kind of encourage folks to attend, and then even if you want to, there's still ability to help volunteer, whether that be to help just greet folks or to moderate. And even if you have not been in OpenSimulator, and I very much I'm very platform agnostic, so I think there's use cases for both Second Life and OpenSimulator. So it's not that I'm pushing one or the other, but I think as others have experienced too, the ease of import and export and the hypergrid and the ability to kind of have a standalone space, which is sometimes can be very important, especially if you're working with youth or other sensitive related populations in regards to education or nonprofit work. OpenSimulator is a better choice often in that way. So if you haven't explored it, I say come to this, and this becomes your 101 learning headlong about OpenSimulator. So I don't know. Do you have any other questions? Anybody?
And what do we do the week after that?
I know.
That's a joke. It sounds great.
Rest.
Oh, you guys have great stuff.
Well, at least I'll be resting. Yeah. Certainly, we have the capacity, if you submit an event, if you do want to, if folks want to keep the momentum going and they're hosting other events, just, fill out that community event sign up form, and I'll grab that link again too. And we'll list them to the calendar, and everybody who registers will have access to that and awareness of that. So, you know, especially if you're doing, I think, you know, if you're doing an event that you think ties well in with this, you know, the people, the attendees that will be there, whether they'd be interested in, you know, kind of open source software, or virtual environments, or, you know, they're an educator, or interested in professional development or training, like all that sort of stuff. Like we can, you can always submit that, and so if you wanted to host something the weekend after, you by all means could, and we'll post it as part of sort of another follow-up event. Post that, you know, and even if it's just kind of a follow-up sort of, you know, birds of a feather type group, you know, that could be a good possible thing to do too. Though I'm not going to elect to organize that. Oh, I don't know if I heard that. Somebody ask me something? Yeah, I'm not sure if Scott was trying to ask a question, or he just had his mic open for a moment. If not, if there are any other questions, and you can type them in chat too, now that I can read. Do I go to ISTE? If you're asking me that. I have not ever been to an ISTE. I would love to go at some point. I've been to other educational related virtual worlds conferences, especially in our earlier, maybe even, you know, leading up to and then during and sort of post of the hype of Second Life. So as Beth was saying, as part of my bio, for many years I worked with Global Kids, which was an educational nonprofit in New York City. And I'll actually kind of give you a link back to that, because there's a lot of great historical, we ourselves and the students were all kind of blogging in those early days, and so there's a lot of, like, you know, their views and our thoughts as we went through about the affordances and practices of things. So let me grab that link. So through that, you know, I attended a lot of educational stuff, but then also we organized some as well. So I've been to, like, some of the MacArthur Foundation Digital Media and Learning conferences that they've had, and you know, of course, prior to the OpenSimulator Community Conferences, Avicon also helped organize the last two of the many that there were Second Life community conferences, community conventions, sorry, and those took place in person in cities around the U.S. The last two that were organized were in 2010 in Boston and 2011 in Oakland. So I've also helped organize sort of larger educational related stuff. So, well, that it was a crossover of many people, but so. Yes, yeah, I know. Well, no. I age well. So does my avatar. But yes, here in it, not initially, but it didn't take long to sort of start using this for kind of serious use cases, whether that be social good, you know, whether that be fundraising or cause awareness related things, and also a lot of kind of creative arts community related stuff, and then also educational stuff. Once, you know, in regards to Global Kids, I started collaborating, working with them by early 2006 in Second Life. So that predates even kind of the hype rush of things. So we were kind of doing work back then. They were the first entity outside of Linden Lab itself in the teen grid, when there was a teen grid, for those that were working with educational related things for youth. So now the age limits are 16 and over can use the regular Second Life client, but at one point there was an entire grid for 13 to 17-year-olds separate from our grid that we're here. So yep. Yep. I mean, obviously, it has its perks and its challenges, but it was around for many years, and it wasn't until 2010. So it probably went from Global Kids didn't get involved until either late 2005, I think, and they were the first entity kind of in Teen Grid outside of the employees of Linden Lab, or the first adults. So I think, it went from like 2005 to 2010, the Teen Grid. So, yeah, no, I always precurse that in that way. And then there still are ways, even, and if anybody ever wants to have, again, that conversation, especially if you're working with youth, there still are ways to, even within Second Life, lock down and create an experience where you can have youth in a Second Life related region that nobody can, that you can control who can get in and who can get out, because the registration API, the Reg API, is still alive, and that allows you. Of course, you have to apply every time you want to use it, but you apply for usage through Linden Lab, and you have to have enough code chops to be able to kind of work with it. Which, if some of you in Second Life are familiar with Franz Charming, he has a whole Reg API setup capabilities for anybody, and we've used it several times for we've used it many times for educators and those also working with disability populations who need to be in a lockdown region. And then when you create an account through the Reg API that has a birth date that is less than what would make them the required age of the 16, it locks them permanently to that region. So even if that region ever goes down in the future and that person tries to access that account, they would not be able to access Second Life with it. So so that's kind of a way around that still in Second Life, even though there's no formal Teen Grid anymore. The registration API, or friends for what put what in chat? The Reg API capability stuff, I think that's more of a Franz is better. Yeah, you still would need to play. Yeah, so of course that assumes, again, it kind of comes down to use cases, right? So, and now we're kind of going into that side of things. If you wanted to use Second Life with youth in that lockdown way, the advantage is the fact that you still could, on the estate side of things, allow outside folks within Second Life proper with their accounts access through like the estate stuff. So yes, you would still have to pay the at best the educational or nonprofit related rate, which is half of the normal rate, so $150 or $149 or whatever it is, for a region. But the advantage is that you still could take advantage of the larger community at large of folks that are still doing work here or doing interesting projects, and have them kind of come in as guest speakers, right? So you could still, or content creators, which is still a little easier here. Then you still would have access to all the content that Second Life has access to. So that is that one side of it. Of course, you still have the problem, then on the other side of that, the open simulator related side of it, you can very easily create a standalone estate, and have it fully behind your own firewall on your own servers, in a university setting or in your school or library, and from there, nobody has access unless you're creating accounts and approving accounts for them and setting those sort of things up. So there's definitely, that's kind of that thing. And of course you can import and export content, if you have access to that. The downside of that being still that the community at large, if you're locking somebody down to an estate thing, it's a little harder to get other folks in from outside if you ever need that. And also, Though with Hypergrid, you still can kind of open up some of that to something, or have somebody create a local account if you're having them be a content developer. But you're beholden to whatever content you have made or can import in, which is to the power of what Kay is trying to do with compile educational content. So I think so that's kind of the good summary about that. And yeah, Kitely, I think things like Kitely are, and I should actually give the other link too. If folks, so Kitely is a great place, I think, to jump in and explore, because you have a good secure hosting space, and they have their own marketplace, and kind of has a lot of built-in features that would be akin to here in a way. Also, and I'll bring up the Avacon link too as well, for folks if you do want to have space similar to what Beth was talking about, that ISTE and both VISTE have on the Avacon grid. We do have a free land program. It's a little more sort of self-service, but it's free. So I'll give you that link too, as soon as that kind of pops back up. Which actually, yeah, Agile, you're there still in the grid too, though a little bit different.
Yeah, it's great stuff. It's a good place.
And then also VWBPE has Rockcliffe has space there as well. So though we call it kind of the community for good, it has both educators and social good folks in it. So thank you. I think that's for me, right? The re-rock. I don't know. So yeah, and of course I should also put out an email, so you can always reach out to me. Let's give this one. Too many emails. This is the Avacon one, so you can always reach me there. And as Beth said as well, I do host more on the, if you have an interesting kind of either nonprofit or tech that would be interesting, either tech topic or project that you're working on. There's also the Nonprofit Commons weekly meetings, and that's a good kind of mix of, there's nonprofits and social good folks, but then there's also librarians and some educators there as well. And this is the, oh, oops, I lost a link. Here's the link to Nonprofit Commons as well. And if you ever want to present, just reach out to me as well. So there's always some upcoming opportunity if you want to show off a project or talk about a particular tech or social media, digital media, virtual world topic. I think that's it, Beth. I don't know. Anything else? And thank you to those that are like obviously delightful, and quite a few other folks are really kind of helping on the back end too of the OSCC stuff. So thanks for all those folks and all the volunteers and all the people helping with that, because they're also part of this. So take care all, and I hope to see you at OSCC or around.